up, guys? So today, let's talk about that swather. I like to call it the mutant mower. You guys asked earlier in the Instagram, Facebook posts, even YouTube, when I put up a picture of that weird deck mower swather that we had, if I could make a video on it. So today, it's too windy to spray, and I just feel like I should just keep working. So I went ahead and sharpened the blades on her. So let's go and take a look. I'll show you what it is, and then I'm gonna go take it for a spin, show you some video of it, and then you guys can go make your own out of some cheap old swathers. So let's take a look. So I'm not sure the year on it. I believe it's a 1960 something. I don't know. I don't think it's 50s. That's a little too old. Somewhere in the 60s. And it's a Wrenn, R-E-N-N. I think a lot of you older guys know these machines. They swathed a lot of acres over the years. I don't remember what size header that this originally had on it. We took it off. We've already cut the header up and used it for other stuff. We quit swathing years ago and we didn't have horses anymore. We had a few horses back in the day, so we'd use this swather to knock some hay down and then bale it. We have used this swather in the past. There's old pictures of my grandma on it swathing the wheat down because we had a pickup header for one of our John Deere 7700s. So there was a time when we did do a little swathing, cutting the crop down and then using pickup headers later, but we've kind of gone away from that. So this swather really just sat there for a lot of years. Didn't really have a whole lot of use. It runs really good for how old it is. At one point in time, we had taken this all off and we put a big old hydraulic pump on the front of this output shaft here that comes off the engine. Just straight drive right off. There's a drive line back under here you can see right there, and that runs out the front. And we use this to run that grain bin setup that we have, but it wasn't powerful enough. We needed more horsepower, so we ended up using an old Chrysler 318 V8 to power it. So then again, this thing sat, didn't have a purpose, and it runs really good. So at one point in time, I'm not sure when or how, but my dad and brother picked up a 5-foot deck mower. Look like a king cutter. Is that what that's called, king cutter? And that was brand new. It's amazing how the dents in the sides when you hit rocks just pulverizes it. And they went ahead and flipped it around, put the wheel that was originally on the front up there, welded on the back, because normally your tractor would be right here with your PTO drive running that. So they flipped everything around and then built just some rough brackets here. I don't know if this was ever supposed to be permanent or if it was kind of temporary. And put some chains on the back here to support it so it can kind of flex up and down a little bit. It tilts. Then we just got a drive line. It's just a standard drive line. And originally the power was right here. There was a 3-belt system that was powered up here, and you had your lever to engage your header. You're basically like a separator lever almost on a combine. And it would tighten up, it'd push this pulley, this big pulley here, and it'd push it over and tighten all the belts up. Well, it was all wore out over the years. It was a 3-belt system. It was cast iron. The cast was chipping and breaking. So we've modified it and modified it and modified it. And I finally got tired of it. The belts kept coming off. It just was not running right. So that's when I put those pictures up, is I went over and I stole some parts off our graveyard of combines over there, those old 7700s. Lift this up here so you guys can see. The system on this swather is pretty neat. It uses these belts, and as you turn the steering wheel, the belts tighten and loosen, and it applies turns hydraulic motors into separately, which then puts power to the wheels. It's kind of a weird setup. It's funny because this thing will just do donuts by itself if you're not holding the steering wheel. But it's basically a zero radius mower. I mean, it's the same concept as a zero radius mower that you'd have at a golf course or some of those professional mowers. We have the old springs on here too, and one of the old hydraulic cylinders is just hanging there. We haven't ever took it off, but you can see it was kind of makeshift. So, but I found this. This was it's got bearings on each side. There was originally a pulley here and a pulley over here, and it was on part of the clean grain elevator, I believe, on the 7700. And it looked strong and sturdy to me, the dual bearings, and then the old belts were really narrow. They were these really fine, thin belts. They kept breaking, popping off. They just couldn't take the torque of this deck mower. So I wanted to convert it to a 1-belt system. And this belt was in really good condition on those combines, and it was a little big, but I was like, if I can somehow find a way to fit this in here, it's worth it. So I took a bunch more pulleys off. There's an idler pulley. Here's another one. And then this guy right here, I had to make. This pulley was off the combine. It was buried back behind a bunch of bigger ones on one of the main drive systems on that 7700, and it was just, basically the problem I was running into is my ratios were way off. The old pulley was a 13-inch. on the end over there, that PTO end, and the one off the output shaft here was only like a 7 or 6 inch. So it was like 2 times the speed ratio. So if your engine's running 2,000 RPM, you were turning the PTO at 1,000, okay? Well, to find the pulleys that got close to that, it was tough. I just couldn't, on the combine, I just searched everywhere. And this was the largest pulley in this size I could find. It's like a 12 inch, I think. And then this one back here is a 6.5. Just barely above 6. So what ended up happening, I've got 2 here, as you can see. I don't use this one though. If I use that one, it would spin it really fast. But it basically has increased my speed a little bit to the deck more, not a lot, which actually a little more speed is kind of nice because it cuts a little better. But so what I've got here is when you pull this lever right here, this engages your drive. Let me climb up here. So if I put this, I cut some notches for it to latch into, and you push it up. I got it nice and tight here. Let me get up here more so I can, usually I do this one hand. There we go. So I pushed it up, latched it. Not easy. I was just wanting to get this thing going. Our grass was kind of growing out of control. What it does is it throws this lever down, and there's like a cam here, or I guess, a cam, a pivoting lever, whatever you want to call it. And it pushes, as you pull that, it lifts this up. I guess I had it backwards the first time. It lifts this up, which pushes this down, which I built this bracket here. It's another piece off the combine, welded it to this square tubing we put on here. And this arm here then shoves down, which then tightens your belt up. And it's pretty snug. So I had to put this idler pulley here to give it tighter around the drive pulley because it was slipping a little bit on it. But now it runs really nice. It was a little bit of a process getting everything lined up right. We don't have any guards on it. I need to make a guard. There was never a guard here. Originally, there was a header right here that covered all this. So we do have a PTO guard that needs tucked down all the way. But it still turns it, even with it disengaged, really slow. But that way you can at least start the engine without having that extra resistance on the starter when you're starting it. And then you're ready, you can engage it. It's a 6-cylinder. I believe this is a Chrysler engine. I don't know what cubic inches this is. Wipe this tag off here. Let's see what we got. It looks like Industrial Products Division, Marysville, Michigan, and a bunch of serial numbers. So it is a HB225, so it must be a 225 cubic inch engine, I'm guessing. Inline 6. I'm sure these were used in some automotive vehicles. This is just the industrial version of it. But I want to say it's a Chrysler. I'm pretty sure it's a Chrysler engine or a Dodge. And it just purrs right along. Little hydraulic cooler back here, radiator. The carburetor is pretty rudimentary, just real bare bones, basic, and automotive starter. So just real basic system, but overall this runs really nice. So let's go take it for a spin, cut some grass, and you guys can see if you want to make one of these yourself. So it's pretty cheap considering buying a mower that's that size, and it does knock the grass down pretty good. So let's go do it. These are the old foot levers to run your reel up and down and your header up and down. We don't use that. That's nothing. Parking brake, don't use that. This is my forward and reverse. I push it forward, goes forward. I pull it back, goes back. Got a little choke lever here for your carb. And then my throttle. Pretty simple. And I think this is lights right here, hazard lights. We don't use that at all, obviously. I used the car lift here, and I lifted the front of this deck up so I get underneath and sharpen the blades with the saw earlier, so that's why I'm parked right here. So let's go ahead and fire her up. Yeah. That's good. Back it up on this thing's kind of weird. You gotta kind of work the steering wheel back and forth. And it turns one wheel, and then it turns the other wheel, if you guys can see. So what I do is I kind of just zigzag it back and forth to go out. When you go forward, it doesn't do this. One-handed here. Going forward here, push the lever forward. Now let's shoot. Pull back. One-handed operation. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and engage the main lever here. So I went ahead and throttled it back. Since it's spinning a lot faster, I don't run the engine real fast, and this doesn't take a lot of power to run. So I don't know what RPM it's spinning at right now. We'll go ahead and start rolling